Back to Ann's point about fundraising, with the PEN campaign, which is going on right now, one of the things that they are emphasizing is engagement, in brackets, community engagement.
Right.
So this is a good time to reach out to them and make the case, which you can do, Suzanne, because you're an alum, is to make the case for fundraising that facilitates that. Because eventually what's going to happen is somebody's going to produce a video, and they love to have deliverables as part of those,
Yes.
because that's eventually how you get people to write checks. That they write
Do you have a
checks for very
contact?
specific
Contact name?
stuff.
And also,
Yes.
Penn is so,
Okay.
is so much a part of Philly's jazz history. You have right on this campus, you have Gino's Empty Foxhole. So you really can't tell this story, the Philadelphia jazz story, without Penn.
Yeah, although in the music department, unless a lot has changed, they've never been much involved.
No,
in
not
jazz.
their jazz. They don't have any jazz.
So we do have
I know,
A jazz
I've been a
band.
guest artist there.
Yeah.
well, we have a popular music jazz
Club or something.
minor that I
Yeah.
help.
Oh,
de-
good.
design.
Beautiful.
Is that Guthrie Ramsey?
With Guy
that teaches
Ramsey,
that?
probably.
No, it's Carol Mueller.
Oh, with
Is it one of
Carol.
the board
Actually,
members?
Carol, Guy, and I are the ones
Clef
that
Club
put
board
it.
members?
No, that's Drexel.
Oh, he's Drexel.
Yeah.
But
Dr.
I want to say, you have a resource
Start.
that you may not be aware of. The person who engineered the requirement at Columbia that people have to take those courses is not our good friend Chris, but it's your advisor, Bob O'Mealy, whose name is spelled wrong here, by the way. It's just a Y at the end, not a U-I. But, so Bob is a real mover and shaker. I mean, he's an English professor that managed to get the entire Columbia faculty to say, oh, gee, you're right, we should be doing that. And he could probably, I'm sure, obviously you know
I
Bob.
talked to him
You're in the
yesterday.
same
He's on his
field.
way to France.
Yeah, he's a colleague
year.
of yours, and you're in the
Yes,
same field. But
yes.
as a strategizer,
Yes.
I'm sure it's incredible actually what he's done at that school, because they historically didn't have any interest in
Well,
jazz.
he organized the jazz study group,
Right, in
which
the
had
90s.
people from all over the country
Yep.
that they flew in 2 or 3 times a year
That's right.
for meetings.
At one of the Jazz Bridge, the Philly Real Book concerts that, several of us were actually, Bob O'Mealy at one point said in his presentation, "Where are the Philly Jazz archives?"
Oh my God, he did say
Yeah,
And
that.
I was
did that.
sitting in the audience, and I had been working on this idea, and I was like,
Wow.
"Thank you." And it was after that I went to Suzanne and actually,
That night you said, "Hey, why don't we do something at the Philly Jazz?"
Wow.
Do you have that on video? That should be the first video. that
Yeah,
goes
we got
out.
it on video.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
And, do that clip. That should be the first viral.
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the
We
hashtag.
got it. Jason's got
Okay,
it.
but you can send
I
that.
mean, the
and
idea
send
had
that
been
out. Yeah.
formulating, but
Right.
that was sort of the ignition.
No, but
Yeah.
it's catchy. It's what 10 seconds, and we can put that out there and that
Oh, yeah.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
We're about to answer your question.
Yeah, right.
Where's the beef?
I want to go back to your point, Suzanne, about this connection between jazz and Philly's social context, social and political context. How jazz was an expression, has been an evolving expression over time of the social and political context, and how it's driven, how jazz has driven that the evolution of people's thinking about it. In a different context, that it really became evident to me as we've done these story circles in the Europa project that I mentioned earlier. And it was really fascinating to me that in story circles with African American Yoruba practitioners, how they talked about their attraction to the spirituality, to Yoruba spirituality, had as much to do with the political drive at that time as it did with the spirituality itself.
Oh, sure.
So they felt they had few really potent expressions of the sense of Black nationalism, African nationalism, and Yoruba. Yoruba faith became the container for that expression. And I think there, would be similar kind of
I
connections
think that's a whole
here.
area that's really been left to languish, that whole connection between jazz. A lot of people said, oh, jazz players aren't really political, but they were in very deep ways, and especially in Philadelphia in the 60s. I mean, really, which nobody's really gotten into that whole thing. I'd love to see something
Well, actually,
like that.
before the '60s, and we've really come full circle. When you opened the meeting, Suzanne, you said what you like about the Chicago Jazz Archives is that they contextualize the
Yeah.
music. From day one, from the birth of the Clef Club, it was about the Union Local 274. It was an act of resistance. In fact, they defied the American
Absolutely.
Union, the last holdout.
Yes.
That with right from here, where the showboat was, the Douglas Hotel historical marker that notes that when Billie Holiday was in town, this is where she stayed. It wasn't coincidence that she stayed there. It was because of racial discrimination. She didn't have anywhere else to stay. It's not coincidence that Black culture is being disproportionately impacted by gentrification because of racial discrimination. We had to live in South Philly, so now these areas are gentrified, so of course our culture will be disproportionately impacted. We talked about the drummers earlier with Philly Joe Jones and with the Pennsylvania Philadelphia
The
Transit
trolley.
Trust. Right, one of the first trolley car operators.
Yeah.
So he was a drum major for justice. So you cannot. Jazz was about intersectionality.
Yeah, you can't
before the
separate.
term was even
Right.
coined. And so for me, my interest in jazz is real as a lifelong activist. Is really about jazz and activism and the role they played in paving the way for the civil rights movement. And that's
Yeah.
the story that has been told but is undertold. And Philadelphia plays such an important part in that story. So I hope out of this archives we contextualize jazz.
Well, I want to make it so the archive, I noticed this about looking at other archives, and some archives are just, they have the famous men thing, then they have this, and, they have certain things that they do, and some of the stuff that I put down here in some sections on here, I don't know where you put this on here.
Back first page.
Oh, first page? Oh. And I added some more sections, but most of them, except for the Chicago site, don't even bother with that intersectionality. They just they just keep within their bubble and stay there. And most of the time, women aren't even really in there at all. So that's another piece for Philadelphia Jazz, which I only learned from Cousin Mary, when she used to say, if I'm ever going to write a book, I'm going to write a book about the women who were around all these musicians, going from Philly to New York and driving them home at night. Her and Eloise used to tell me, the wives and the girlfriends or whatever, and everybody who was involved in that. But I'd like to see this to be a specifically Philly-owned site where it doesn't look generic like any other jazz archive, as far as that's concerned. And
Going back to what you said, though, in terms of having the various sites, because there will be, because the Clef
Yeah.
Club has archives here and the Bloxham collection,
Right.
too. So there would be a way that we can make sure that we publicize the fact that these are the spaces where you need to go in order to find out about Philly jazz.
okay. And then for the exhibits from these different places, would we kind of tailor make them for, because with Jermaine, the Pew people are saying, no, we want to see how you're going to create dances from these archives, and we're going to see how you can make films from these archives. And already I've had in my mind doing an ensemble theatrical piece of women talking about singing jazz and being in that male-dominated, it's not.
We had Nina Simone here.
Yeah,
She used
no,
to play
yeah.
at a piano bar, and Burl Booker.
Yes, of course,